Welcome to another episode of Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Our guest today has closed around $3.2 billion in commercial real estate acquisitions over the course of his real estate career. He previously worked for Wells Fargo's Real Estate Investment Bank and has also held various investment positions with real estate private equity firms, including the Swig Company and TA Associates Realty. Brad Johnson is managing partner at Evergreen and is also the co-founder of Park Street Partners. Brad, welcome to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
Hey, Seth. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to get things started, what are your real estate goals?
Well, it's funny. I started out having pretty well-defined goals. I wanted to control 100 million of assets.
Yeah.
As a sponsor. And then, once I started making great progress on that, I kind of switched it. I decided that I wanted to focus more on systems versus goals because I feel like that 100 million in assets only really works if it's a buyer's market, right? Because you can easily just keep buying right until you hit your goal. That doesn't necessarily mean you're buying great deals. So I switched it more towards systems in terms of just making a certain amount of proactive outreach to owners, talking to brokers, trying to unearth great deals. Once I hit a certain threshold where I felt like I had achieved most of what I was looking for with that initial goal.
Yeah. And was that original 100 million just an arbitrary number?
It totally was. Yeah. I mean, looking back, I was like, I easily could have just said it was $1 billion or 10 million. And, at the time, either would have worked fine. I think the purpose is just to have a clear vision of what you're trying to accomplish. And it's funny how when you do set those types of goals, you end up through serendipity or just pure hustle, you end up finding a way getting pretty close, I find.
Yeah. And it was interesting that you mentioned, if you have that dollar volume, you're not necessarily buying good deals. And I guess it's very dependent on what part of the cycle you're buying into, right?
Totally. And I mean, the reality is that you can control a ton of real estate and a much bigger number than that. But if you don't have that much of the economics as the sponsor, it doesn't really matter, right? So it's it's really a formula. It's, not just the amount, the dollar amount, but what percentage of that dollar amount do you have a realistic chance at securing in equity?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, outreaching and building those relationships. Do you have any routines or rituals that you do, maybe daily, weekly, monthly, that really keep you focused on your acquisitions?
Yeah, when I was starting off, I hit the same list of brokers every month. And so I didn't want to hit them every week or something crazy because they get sick of you, right? But every month I wanted to check in with a list. And I didn't have fancy, customer relationship management software or anything. I just did it off an Excel spreadsheet. And I would just reach out to these people and say, hey, look, these are the types of deals I'm looking for. I'm serious about this asset class. I just made a couple offers on similar parks. And slowly, I would start to get inbound deal flow from these individuals. And then once I started doing a few deals and became more of a known entity, that had a flywheel component to it, right? It's once you show the market that you're a player and you can close successfully and do what you say you're going to do, all of a sudden the deal flow starts to pick up.
For sure. And how many contacts do you estimate it took until the broker started remembering your name?
Ooh, it was, I did the first deal inside of 6 months, which is, pretty quick, but it was a buyer's market at the time.
Yeah.
But I would say you should expect it to take a year before your first deal, and just constantly reaching out to these people, both in person if you can, but certainly by the phone and email.
Yeah, because I think one sales program preaches, it takes 7 contacts before somebody will actually remember who you are. So that's an interesting answer.
Oh, I totally agree with that because if you think about it, it's like, if they've never heard of you and you're trying to tell them, well, I want this specific type of deal in this market that has this type of return characteristics and value add component. How could that person possibly remember that after one phone call, right? Yeah. They're inundated with prospective buyers, most of whom are never going to actually execute. They're just looky-loos. So the people that have extra follow through and follow up, right, stand out.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's also a certain bit of serendipity to this, right? I mean, I can remember one of the early deals. I happened to randomly reach out to this broker who, I was not top of his mind, phone calls to make, but a deal had just fallen out of contract with another buyer, and it happened to fit my deal criteria. And lo and behold, I was sitting right there. And so the only reason he even brought it up to me is because I happened to call him that exact day.
Yeah. And, it's amazing how many times that actually happens. You're just in the right place at the right time and a deal just falls in your lap.
Yeah. I mean, certainly there's a component of luck here, but, hustle and hard work, it's amazing how many more opportunities you're going to find.
Yeah. And you've done quite a bit of volume in terms of real estate. Can you think of any things as you were growing your business that you thought for sure would work out, but didn't end up working out as planned?
Yeah, one deal. So this is on the principal side when it was actually my company versus in my prior career in real estate, I worked for other people and invested on behalf of other entities and individuals. But when I became a principal and started investing myself, one of the early deals we did, it looked like just a home run. All the market statistics were there, the demand drivers, the model, the Excel model looked beautiful, right? All the returns on paper looked amazing. Yeah. And then it was just one of these random things where it ended up taking way too much time to execute the turnaround plan relative to the other opportunities we were seeing in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And so it's something that I learned where it's not just about what the IRR is or the equity multiple, what the model looks like. It's actually, if you think about it, there's a time component to this, right? It's what is your return on your available unit of time? Because you can only do so many of these types of turnaround deals. And so that deal, we ended up tapping the brakes on how much capital we were putting in and how much time we were putting in, because relative to the other great deals we were doing, they took a fraction of the time and equity. It was a loser. So we ended up selling that deal. We still made money. The investor was happy. It worked out, but relative to what that opportunity should have been, it didn't really pan out.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one thing. Maybe newer investors they'll get the look in their eye when they see a really good deal on paper. That's a really heavy lift, and once they're involved in it, they realize it takes a lot more than just moving papers around to make it work.
Yeah, and in my space that happens all the time because there's some of these properties that are 50% occupied, and the numbers look unreal on paper, right? If you fill that thing up, or even if you fill it up 80%. Yeah. But you have to get ready to basically live in that market or hire a huge team in that market. Yeah. To do that turnaround. And I think you're right. You can fall in love with deals, especially early on. And that's one of the big hurdles of our industry is trying to be objective and not just get deal momentum where it's like, okay, I'm working so hard. I finally found this deal that it works on paper. And then you get into due diligence and you're like, oh, I see a lot of red flags, but you feel like you're so committed. It's really easy to do that, especially early on. And so the key I always say to people who are starting off is that they need to really work on that funnel, because if you have 4 or 5 opportunities that you're looking at any given time, you're never going to be wed to any one of them.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a good lesson. Are there any other lessons you've picked up along the way? Any good best practices?
Well, Seth, I mean, this is only a 30, 40 minute.
Yeah, that's right. We don't have a week.
Yeah, it's I think that coming from the institutional side and the private equity world of real estate, where we outsourced a lot of the kind of operational stuff. We were more of the investors, acquisition people, and then we'd have property management teams do the heavy lifting day to day. I think moving to the principal side, I now realize, this sounds cliche and kind of silly. Of course you should realize this, but people are a huge component of your overall returns. Your staff, right? Not only at the property, but at the corporate level, the people that you're hiring to to help run the company that you're growing are absolutely critical. And I think as a finance person, I didn't really have that full appreciation going into being an entrepreneur, because you could just get in love with, the numbers and the theory and the strategy of an investment relative to the day-to-day. Okay, who's actually, sending out the tenant notice statements, and who is, doing the bookkeeping, and who is in charge of human relations, and who's your CFO. So all these people you have to backfill as you grow the company, as you're building the airplane, as you jump off the cliff, right? All these people are critical to the investment success, not just the Excel model.
Yeah. Do you have any criteria that you use to separate a good hire versus a bad hire? But besides your gut, which I'm sure plays somewhat into that.
I think I'm 50-50 on this. I think this is tough for any business, but to me, I need to see them in the trenches. I can't just tell who somebody is from their resume. I've hired people with, look like bulletproof resumes, from Ivy League schools with all kinds of awards, scholarships, great, an investment banking background. And, some of those people haven't panned out. So you can't, it's too hard to hire in 2D on a piece of paper and even through an interview process, because you can check referrals, but of course all the referrals are going to be great, right? It's like, these people aren't giving you people who are going to give them negative, reviews. So I'm a big believer in somehow configuring the process to have them kind of trial the job, both for them and for you, because you really can't get that experience. You can't view a person without being in the trenches with them and seeing what they actually are like on a day-to-day basis and what work they produce.
Yeah, gotcha. Thinking on the principal side, is there one deal that really stands out as a keystone deal for you?
Yeah, it was a deal that we did very early on, a mobile home park in the market of Duluth, Minnesota, which is, it's up there. It's cold, and it's on the border of Wisconsin. And are you familiar with Duluth?
I actually lived in Minnesota for a year doing hockey. So
stop it.
Yeah.
Oh, hence the accent. Okay,
that's right. Yeah, I was a full-time hockey referee. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
I love hockey. What position were you?
Oh, I was a referee, so I was working with a couple. There was a couple pro leagues and some junior leagues down there. So cool. They gave me a house to live in St. Paul, in Woodbury, and so I drove by Duluth many a time.
Oh, that's a good deal.
Yeah.
Well, then the market. I mean, it's not, it's certainly not Los Angeles or New York, but it's a great little market that I kind of fell in love with. And we had a property up there that was an off-market deal for one of these brokers that I had regularly kept in touch with. And the deal had just fallen out of contract with another buyer. So they weren't, they didn't broadly market it. It wasn't on MLS or LoopNet. They had just, they had given it to one buyer. He fell out of contract because he got a little nervous about the financials and the cap rate that he was going in at. I think it was like a 6.5 cap rate on paper, which sounds great for if you're buying apartment buildings in Phoenix. But, if you're buying mobile home parks in Duluth, Minnesota in 2016, that was a pretty low cap rate.
Yeah.
But, I spent a ton of time digging into the numbers and digging into the market and got pretty comfortable that, this owner had really inflated the expenses because he developed the property with his father. He'd owned it for 35 years. So he had zero depreciation left, right? So every dollar that they were making in net income was taxed at 40% or 35%. So he put his healthcare in there. He put his son's healthcare. He put his entire family's cell phone plans, 4 car payments, right? He padded the expenses. So in reality, it was more like a 8, maybe 8.5 cap. And then he also wasn't billing back the tenants for water. He was just eating those costs. So he was doing a fine enough job, but because he didn't have any debt on the property, he owned it forever. There wasn't a huge incentive to squeeze every nickel out of the property.
Yeah.
He wasn't treating it like it was a business. He was treating it like he was the mayor, right? He loved like driving around the park and that fire hydrant could use another cone of paint. He's pretty bored at this point, so his expenses were really high.
Yeah.
So we came in and we purchased the park for I think it was 4.2 million. We put just over $1 million in equity in it, the rest debt, with a 10-year CMBS loan. Right, Wall Street loves these mobile home parks. Yeah. And then we went ahead and we passed through the water charges, which is saved the property like about $110,000 a year, something like that. And then we took lot rents from around $350 a month to $400, which isn't a ton of money on a absolute dollar basis, but it's pretty meaningful on a percentage basis.
Yeah.
Especially over 140 some lots. So we really didn't do a whole ton. It wasn't like this heavy lift where we're completely renovating the entire property. We just did the basics, but we did them well in a market where affordable housing was a real problem. It's worked out really well. It's been about a low 20 cash on cash since 2016, and if we took the same type of cap rate that we bought it at with the new NOI, which has been doubled since what we bought it, we've probably made in the neighborhood of $4 million in equity. Yeah. on that initial 1.2 million.
Yeah.
So pretty good outcome so far. Of course, they don't all go quite that well.
No,
I wish they did.
Yeah.
But that was a great one that happened early. That was a nice springboard for other deals, right? When it comes to both brokers and investors, right? It's a good case study to then build from.
Yeah, and when you were first looking at that deal, was it the broker that said, "Hey, listen, like the guy's kind of loading up his expenses," or is that was it that conversation with the broker that really got you interested in the property, or was it just you looking through all the numbers?
They, I think, had alluded to it. Hey, we think these expenses are a little high, but they didn't have the detail of the profit and loss statement yet. They were just doing it on kind of the back of a napkin because this owner was a little prickly, right? He didn't want to give a lot of financials until you were under contract with him. So we actually dug into his general ledger. Right, we had thankfully he put us in touch with his accountant. His accountant gives us all these financials, and then you go item by line item and be like, well, okay, I'm pretty sure we don't need 5 people's cell phone plans to run this property, and you can just start taking those out of the numbers.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's actually a really good case study, and it sounds like a really good deal.
Yeah, no, it's been a good one. This is a weird little niche in real estate where you can get these mom and pop type of owners that they're not running it like an institutional firm would. So occasionally you run into these that they're not everywhere out there, but if you do enough digging, you can find them.
Yeah. So was the game plan to do a refinance at some point with this one, or what was your game plan?
Yeah, so this one, the CMBS loans, the one bad thing about them is that they do lock you up for 10 years. Yeah, you can prepay them, but there is a penalty for it. Yeah. So, we really are skewed towards long-term ownership. And here, look, we didn't realize we were going to get this big of a home run this quickly. And had we known that before we got the debt, we probably would have done a 3-year loan or a 5-year loan. Would have been easier to refinance. But I think, at this point, we're content to keep the cash flow. If we got a crazy offer, perhaps they would pay the defeasance or assume the loan. It's a good interest rate now that rates are ticking up.
Yeah.
But it's not a priority to sell it because of the cash flow.
For sure. And like you said, not every deal is like this one. But over the course of your career as you're building your business, how has investing in real estate really changed your setup with your life?
Yeah. So before I got on the principal side, I was working in investment banking, and the last deal I worked on was Salesforce Tower, which is a 1 million square foot office building in San Francisco that was dirt when we started working on it, and now it's this glorious building that is the highest building on the West Coast. And so that deal took over my life. I just had my first kid at the time, and investment banking hours are insane. And so I had shown people pictures of my newborn son, and all the pictures were of him asleep. Because when I went to work, he was asleep, and when I got home, he was asleep, and that included weekends. So it just was not sustainable for the life that I wanted to live, and so that was the catalyst for me going off on my own.
Yeah.
And real estate has really given me that freedom. It's given me the freedom to look. Once certainly there are times where we work very hard. You're in the middle of a deal, right? It's 8 to 5 does not work, but. I just got back from, a 3-week vacation for the holidays where, I'm checking in daily, of course, to, see how things are going with our people and our properties. But, I was able to, go off in the mountains and enjoy my holiday time with the family and not feel like I had to punch a time card.
For sure. And as you keep doing these deals, is there a point in time, like 10 years from now, do you think you're still going to be doing the deals, or will you take a step back?
No, I think I'll always be doing deals. I don't understand the concept of retirement. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I can only play so much golf.
Yeah. Well, the question is if you get better each round you play.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. I think I've peaked. I don't think I'm getting much better, which is not to say much. I'm not that amazing, but I think that part of this is just very fun. And, sure, if it stopped being fun and it started to feel like a brutal job, then maybe I'd take a step back. But I'm of the mindset that, you can live extremely long and great life if you keep your mind sharp and you keep trying to grow and compound, which is kind of my just underlying motto in life, is that everything should be compounding. Just like your golf comment, you should be trying to get better at everything you care about.
Yeah, no, that's a good message. So Brad, if somebody's looking to get in touch with you or learn more about your company, where can they find you?
They can reach out to me, Brad, at evergreencap.com, or they can just go to the website, evergreencap.com, learn a little bit more about what we're doing within the manufactured housing space currently. Okay. We can go from there.
No, that sounds great. And we'll be sure to include all those links so people can just click on those. So Brad, I just wanted to thank you so much for your time and sharing your real estate success with us today.
Yeah, of course. Happy to do it, Seth.
Yeah. And to you, our viewers, I wish you well in your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.